Here's another trick you can do that involves approaching the chord change that is going from C to A. When we go to this name of the chord, or they call it the root of the chord, A7. And in the past we approached it from a half step below or a half step above, but you can approach this from a whole step above. And here's a couple of whole step tricks. That is, what we could do is, instead of playing the fifth, I could just say, well, B is a whole step above A, and then go down and get it a half step below. So you're doing kind of a double approach tone using whole step above A, half step below A, and it's always a half step below because the leading tone sounds really nice. Not in every bass line will you always have a half step below, but for these approach tones you do that. It's called a leading tone approach. And so that's one really nice thing that sounds really great. So if you're going to go to an A, don't put the fifth half step, but a whole step above the note you're approaching and a half step below. And you can reverse that. Okay? You can, let me color in my lines here. You can actually go a half step below right here, G sharp, which would normally just go G sharp A, and then a whole step above. The theory behind this, and the reason it works so well, it works almost every time, is that this really makes a dominant chord for the A7. You'll learn later if you study some theory. What we're really doing is two notes from an E7, which goes so nicely to an A7. The direction is so solid that even though you're plugging in that little passing chord, it still sounds nice. And there's one more thing you can do, which is really nice, and that's a whole step and then a half step from above. So what you can do is you can be a whole step above A, which is B, approach it from a whole step, and then fill in the whole step with flat, B flat. So you're going B, B flat, A, down like that, and that sounds really nice. And so there's a few tricks that you can try. Once you get bored with, just the half step above, half step below thing, then you can work on that whole step above and filling it in these various ways. Oh, there's one more way. Let me show you another little trick. As long as we're here, right, we may as well do all the tricks. This is a nice one. If the thing's moving at a fairly slow pace or moderate pace, what you can do is go down to G, quarter note, and then go whole step above, half step above, in eighth notes. Bum, ba, da, dum. Like that. Bum, ba, da, dum. And that sounds kind of nice. And also, you can even do it this way. Bum, bum, ba, da, dum. Go a whole step above, a half step below in eighth notes, or a half step below, a whole step above in eighth notes, and do it that way. So there's about 4 or 5 little things that you can do to make your writing more interesting. And in the beginning, you might actually write these bass lines out until you get really used to doing them, at sight. They're so easy to write out. A nice trick, by the way, is if you were writing this out and you were in the beginning stages, what you do, you have a C chord, right? So what you would do is you write next to it a G in parentheses. It's not a G chord, it's a G note, so you can know what note you're supposed to play. And when you finally get to the A7, you got an A7 here, and then in parentheses off the side you can write an E, so you can remember what the fifth is. You can go through, and this is what I teach my tuba players when I train them. I say, look, you can just put it in. That way you don't have to write anything. And then all the ornamentation you can do after the fact. If you want to approach this from a half step below or a whole step above, half step, or anything you want to do, at least you know that it's C, G, and then the next one's A, right? So you want it above or below or whatever kind of approach you want to make.